Most people go to Healthcon for the networking. The education is great, but you can get education online. So the reason a lot of people want to be in person at Healthcon is for those networking opportunities. For me personally, one of the reasons I love to go in person now is it gives me an opportunity to do things like record videos for my podcast, as well as network with some of those vendors and potentially get sponsors for my channel. This was my 5th in-person Healthcon. My first was when I spoke at Las Vegas in 2015. I was at Orlando 2018, I think it was, maybe 2017. And then I also did the regionals in Denver and DC. Usually with Healthcon, you can pack kind of light, but this year I had to pack a checked bag and take a carry-on because I had all kinds of podcasting equipment, and for whatever reason, I decided that I needed to bring like multiple pairs of shoes. So with microphones, lighting, tripods, that was not enough to pack in just a carry-on. The day that I left for Healthcon, I went out of Philadelphia Airport and there was actually a little bit of fanfare involved. I ran into Stephanie, who is on the National Advisory Board, and she had a delayed flight that was connecting through Philadelphia and just so happened to be on the flight that I was going out of. And I wound up running into, of all people, Christine Hall and Lexi, who live in South Florida. So to find them in the Philadelphia airport was absolutely bizarre. And when Christine and Lexi spotted me, they decided it would be a funny idea to start screaming, "Oh my God, there's famous YouTuber Victoria Mull, that's Victoria Mull." Except unbeknownst to them, in the crowd of people that turned was also the marketing manager for one of my biggest new affiliates. So my start before I even got to Healthcon was a little wacky, and I am kicking myself because as soon as I got to Vegas, I realized we lost our opportunity to make one of those funny videos where like we set our phone on the floor and we pretend that we're like jumping over it and then arrive at our destination. I am still just absolutely beating myself up over that one. So I arrived super late on Saturday and immediately stepped off the shuttle to get to the hotel and was asked for a selfie. So the girls then just did not let me hear the end of that as well. Now, there's already some pre-conference stuff that happens on Saturday. I got in super late, so I didn't get any of that, but they have things like Teach the Teacher. So if you are an instructor, the interesting thing about Teach the Teacher is it's not like you become an AAPC instructor and you get an email and it's like, hey, come to Teach the Teacher at Healthcon. Like they don't have an email list for instructors that they notify them about Teach the Teacher. It's kind of this word of mouth thing that you're supposed to just know about when you're, I guess, perusing the agenda for Healthcon. And instructors can use that to earn their continuing teaching units. I think you get like 8 CETUs, and they teach you information about like the commonly missed concepts on the exam, areas people are struggling with, changes to the exams. There was also an E&M workshop and a small reception on Saturday, and I think that's also when the National Advisory Board and Chapter Association Board were having their annual meetings. Now on Sunday, things pick up, but a little bit more into the afternoon. So the AAPC, this conference, and the ones prior I've been to, I think for the past year, do like a presentation on becoming a thought leader with the AAPC, what that looks like, how you have different opportunities to create content or publish things with the AAPC. If you're ever interested in getting more involved or creating content for the AAPC, it's definitely not one to miss. They go over a lot of the different opportunities that they have available. Now, there was also an Ask the Coder panel, and I noticed that this year there seems to be a lot of panel discussions. Some people really like panel discussions. They're not my personal favorite because I tend to lose interest when we get into like 15 minutes or so. I know there's been panels in the past, but for some reason this year there just seemed to be a lot of different panels. Almost for like every single core credential, I think. Like they had a billing one, a coding one, a practice manager one. There was one for like CDI and a risk adjustment. And what the panels are they're almost like a Q&A session. So you can text in questions, you can walk up to the microphone and ask questions. And some of them are really good questions, and others I feel like people are just kind of looking for some kind of validation or trying to find answers where there really aren't answers, like looking for, oh, my providers are doing this. Can you tell me where there's a very specific federal letter that says that they are not allowed to do that? Or like, oh, my providers are doing this thing and how do I get them to stop doing that? Now, after that, there was this absolutely amazing presentation that was a collaboration between the chapter advisory board and the national advisory board. And it was just about like playing your best hand with the AAPC, all the different opportunities out there, the differences between the NAB and the CAB. So it was just like, you could tell there was a lot of work that went into it. I heard that Rita Genovese put a ton of work into there. I didn't get a chance to connect with her at conference. There was a few people that for some reason I just could not connect with, even though I was like all over the place. It was just, conference sometimes seems like it's so long, but also in many ways very short. But it was so good to see that sort of roundtable networking discussion happening, especially after there's been kind of a few rough years with the chapter association. It used to be prior to COVID that like if you were a representative on the chapter advisory board, like the head chapter advisory board, it was very rare for people to drop off of the board. And then with COVID and so many different things happening and things, just different instances in people's lives, like people started dropping off of the chapter advisory board. So they've had a couple of rough years, and it's so great to see them really getting back on the right track. After that was the rookie session, and that's when AAPC Alex comes to like the first time convention people and tells them all about the conference app and how to get the most out of conference and the different opportunities available. I skipped out on that, although I usually love going to the rookie session because I wanted to go grab some lunch. The sushi place was closed, so I had to get some overpriced crab rangoon and fried rice. And then I missed out on the little start of Bevan's presentation. He's the head of the AAPC, and that's my favorite part because I get to get all the updates of everything that's going on with the AAPC. One of the big things that happened, there wasn't anything like super earth-shattering this time, but one thing that did stand out to me was that they are moving forward more. I think we're getting closer. They've been kind of teasing this for years, but moving forward now with getting a new platform for Practicode that is easier, better supported, and then we may be moving more towards getting rid of that apprenticeship status. I also had to laugh because while I was walking to my seat, Bevan was making a comment about where we've had our previous conferences, and he said, oh, everyone wants to go back to doing them in Vegas and Orlando because everyone seems to love sin and family-oriented things, and I gave out a woo because, I mean, yeah, that pretty much hits the mark for me. Last year I did a dance performance where I dressed up as a spicy version of Ursula the Sea Witch, so yeah, I mean, that pretty much hits. After Bevan, there was this presentation that was like a semi-keynote, and it was about networking. It kind of fell flat for me. There was a lot of parts where she was talking about like personal grooming and make sure you brush your hair and don't have busted buttons when you're networking with people. I feel like these things should be painfully obvious, and I think that for anyone who's attending a conference like Healthcon, this is not a cheap conference. If you're at that point in your career, you probably already know to check for stains and rips on your clothes. And for me personally, sometimes these types of discussions don't always hit for me because I come to conference for like different reasons than I think are the traditional reasons. So since I'm working at things with a different angle, some of the stereotypical kind of etiquette doesn't always necessarily apply to me. Now, after that, there was a little welcome reception inside with little, snacks and hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and there were lyra performers, which I was really excited to see. I actually recently took my first stab at lyra. I still have a lot of work to do there because my lower core needs to hoist myself up a little bit better, but yeah, it was really cool to see them in sort of a more mainstream type of setting. And then that evening I went out with a few friends, so Christine Hall, Alexis Combs, Natasha Timberlake, Lady Martinez, Missy Kirshner, Kelly Shaw. And we went to the Meow Wolf Omega Mart, which I didn't know anything about, and I was told this is like super popular on TikTok and stuff, and apparently my child got very upset that I went without her. She apparently knew all about it. It was a wild trip. I really enjoyed going, and it was crazy to check out, but yeah, apparently I might need to now find another cheap trip out to Vegas because my kid was like sad and insanely jealous that I went without her. A lot of people travel to Healthcon by themselves, so it's not uncommon for people to kind of pair up. Like you find someone, you click a little bit, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? And groups of people just kind of naturally form and wind up going out to dinner and stuff together. The next morning, they had a very basic sort of continental breakfast, muffins and juice and coffee. The keynote speaker that day was a lot better, but it's funny how like I've been in the industry and I've learned the tricks of the trade for a while, and there's certain things that I can like pick up on other people that I think maybe aren't always picked up on by others. Like I noticed that the lady who was doing the keynote was wearing all red, and there's been this like popular old school thought for ages that like, oh, if you wear red, it's a power color and people are gonna pay attention more because you're all dressed in red. And the keynote speaker was dressed in red, and I'm like, oh, that's probably because of that old school thought process of, oh, if you wear red, people will pay more attention to you, they'll be more alert. She did an interactive presentation. I skipped out a little bit on it because I wanted to head off to do some things over in the vendor room while it was a little bit more vacant. Again, for me personally, I tend to be very odd and very particular about certain things. Now, there was also some complaints at this point, I think, in the conference about the lack of water. I always bring a water bottle with me. In fact, my routine when I go to a conference or most hotels is I arrive and then I check out what the grocery delivery situation is, and then I have a few snacks and drinks delivered. My go-to is like a box of Cheez-Its, some kind of sweet snack, and then I also get a jug of Starbucks cold brew blonde roast, and that way I make myself cold brew coffee in the morning. I also usually pick up like either a chocolate protein shake or a chocolate milk, so I can make myself a little mocha cold brew mix, and then I fill up my water bottle with that, and then once I'm done with that, I rinse it out and fill it up with whatever water's available at the conference. Or I go to the ice machine on my hotel floor and fill it up with ice, and then I have nice cold ice water for the rest of the day. After that is when it started going into breakout sessions. Breakout sessions are when there's a choice of like 8 or 10 different sessions that you can go to during that hour. So if you want to go to something on ICD-10-CM or orthopedics or ABNs, you can have your pick. Some of the rooms filled up like super quick, so it was hard for some people to get into a couple of the topics that they wanted to because they had just filled up super fast. And there was lots of different variety of speakers as well. Some of the people like that were there speaking, I really wanted to connect with and just didn't get a chance to. Like CJ Wolf, I know I passed kind of in the hallway and like you may have waved or something. And like Christopher Chandler, I don't know that I even saw him the entirety of conference. And it's funny how sometimes you will just make it round and round conference several days and you'll like maybe see the same person 15 times, but then other people miss entirely. I did, however, make it over to the vendor room. One of my personal goals for conference was I had special business cards made. So I had like standard business cards that's just like about me. But then for the vendors, I had business cards made that on the back was a QR code. And if you scan it, it takes you to a Google Drive with like my media kit, an introduction video, FAQs, like opportunities for promotions through my channel, sponsorship opportunities, and some of the different services that I offer. The vendor room was pretty massive, so there was a huge piece that was put together by the AAPC. There was a large Optum vendor booth. They were giving away like t-shirts and stuff. The AMA was there, like Haugen was there, a bunch of different billing companies. Dr. Z was there, and it was so cool. Like I was kind of like nonchalantly walking by his booth and he's like, hey, I know you, which was cool. So I got to connect with Dr. Z. And while I was talking to him, I asked him about the CERC credential because for years I'd been hearing, oh, it's so hard to get these CERC CEUs. And the rumor was that no one but Dr. Z was allowed to offer them because there was like some kind of agreement. And I found out that what it is that Dr. Z, because he helped create this CERC credential, he gets to approve what does and doesn't qualify for CERC CEUs. So he said that sometimes he would get presentations that didn't have correct information, they may have been outdated codes, and so those would not get approved for the CERC credentials. But it was pretty cool that Dr. Z like knew who I was. Now, one of the things you can sign up for as part of Healthcon is the Anatomy Expo. That is like a 3-hour commitment that you go to all these different rooms and they have presentations on different body systems. They have different devices and it's really cool. You go in and out and I guess you kind of like rotate rooms and it seemed so cool and I really wanted to go and dive in, but I had podcast interview commitments that I had to get to. But then after that was lunch and I was super happy because they had essentially caprese, like tomatoes and mozzarella, and I I love me some caprese. I love mozzarella cheese. So I basically ate like mostly slices of mozzarella cheese for lunch. And then again, there was more panels. There was like Ask the CDI Expert, Ask the Biller. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the panels, Q&As. There's I feel like sometimes I feel bad. Like I wouldn't want to do them just because oftentimes they will make them sit on a really uncomfortable looking stool, and I feel uncomfortable just watching I have a big butt, and for me to sit on a stool for like an hour while people grill me questions, like that seems intense. I did check out Christine Hall's presentation on preventative medicine services, which when I got there, I realized I had already seen and I really don't recall where or when. But Christine's an amazing presenter and she is definitely not one to miss. And I'm actually really happy because Christine and I are going to be potentially working with a certain organization on some things. So I'm hoping there might be some more opportunities for us to collaborate in the future. And then Monday night, they had a little happy hour. It was the Codify Murder Mystery Happy Hour. The snacks and drinks were great. I was not a big fan of the murder mystery because I could tell everything was like very AI generated. The images were AI generated. The murder mystery itself was probably AI generated. And I am just, I'm over AI. I am over it. I am tired of it. I am tired of everything seeming like everyone's just going to make crappy content and pull a fast one on us and we're just going to gobble it up because we don't know any better. I am just really over the cold, lacking, lazy AI generated stuff. I'm over it. I appreciate that others don't care one way or the other. They're like, if it's good, I'm going to enjoy it. But to me, it just feels like I didn't want to put effort into this. So I partook of a couple of snacks just to hold me over because I went out to dinner with a bunch of friends again. So Christine, Lexi, Missy, Gabriela Juarez, Keisha Williams, Maya Turner. So we all went out to dinner and then a few of us went to go over and check out the fountains at the Bellagio and the Botanical Gardens. And then Tuesday morning started super early, like 7:30 a.m. with the Ask the Practice Manager panel. Again, just like panels out the wazoo. I came down for breakfast, but I was a little late. So I think by the time I got there, there was only like fruit left. And then they had an E&M panel and then the legal trends panel. And I'm sad that I had to miss the legal trends panel. That's usually a good one. But again, another one where people kind of ask like, is it legal that my provider is blah, blah, blah? So sometimes it can be interesting, we'll say. I've sat in on legal trends panels in the past. They're usually really good. I like to see Michael Misko up there. I have a joke. I have met Michael Misko at least a dozen times in my career over the past 10 plus years. And every time I've met Michael Misko, he has absolutely no idea who I am. You would think he has never seen me before in his entire life because apparently I have never left that good of an impression on him. And then there was a very lovely lunch and then lots more breakout sessions. Keisha did one on gender-specific services. There were some on, I think, orthopedics, compliance, collaborative care, even forensic billing and coding. And then I had my afternoon presentation, which was a 4:15 presentation, like at last presentation of the day when most people are dead tired. And I spoke on personal branding. So I started out talking about personal branding and then I introduced myself the way that I do in my videos. I was like, I'm Victoria Mull and I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator. And there was this woo from the audience, which was like the fact to even just that alone get on a 4:15 end of the day presentation was pretty awesome. And I almost forgot that during the entire conference, just like nonstop, I was being stopped and thanked. Like, hey, Victoria, I wouldn't have passed my exam if it weren't for you. Thank you because I send my videos to your students. People were asking for selfies. At one point, I think like 7 people were around me and we were stopping and taking pictures. So it was so awesome getting to meet everyone and just like amazing and humbling and fantastic. Especially because I have been struggling just a little bit lately. I, run different analytics on my channel, and then sometimes if I find other creators, I'll see like what they're doing and run some of their analytics. And you know how sometimes you'll run like a billing report and you can look at the numbers and immediately tell that something is not right? I can do that with other medical billing and coding creators' YouTube analytics. And yes, there's some channels that things are not adding up. But honestly, like when I go to Healthcon and I'm presenting and I get those kinds of reactions from people, there's no faking that. But anyway, thank you so much to those of you that stopped by and said hi and took pictures, because I loved connecting with everyone. Now, by Tuesday night, I was kind of burnt out, so I pretty much just stayed in my hotel room and ate sushi and spam musubi. I had to be up early because Alex asked me if I would participate in one of their I am AAPC video sessions, and the only slot he had available was like early Wednesday. I think they did a bunch of them at conference, so I'm not quite sure when mine will potentially be posting, but we'll keep an eye out. Now, I had to head home shortly after that, so I did the recording with Alex, packed up my stuff, and headed over to the airport. This was the first time in a while that I had a connecting flight. For some reason, I couldn't find a flight straight back home to Philadelphia, so I had to stop in Phoenix, and I was a little concerned about the connecting flight, even though I think it was like a 2-hour layover. But somehow I landed in Philadelphia at 11:30 at night, and my checked bag with my podcasting equipment landed in Lancaster at 4 in the morning. But American Airlines actually had someone run it from Lancaster the next day to my house, which was pretty great. Now, I appreciate that in-person conferences can be expensive, especially when you're calculating in things like travel and hotels. So it definitely is not for everyone. Some people like doing the virtual presentations because of the cost savings there. And some people are like, hey, I don't want to pay for anything. I would rather go to chapter associations and get the free CEUs from there. Totally respect that. But if you're ever interested in going to Healthcon and having your employer pay for it, there is paperwork that the AAPC has on the website that you can download that's like, this is why you should let your employee go to Healthcon type stuff. I would approach them before they make their budget plans for that year. So give them well advanced, like, hey, next year I would like to go to this conference, and see what they can do for you. Maybe they'll pay for the conference, but not your travel and hotel. Or maybe they'll at least give you like a day worked for going to conference. So have that discussion with your employer. The in-person attendance was, I think, a little over 1,500 people, which I understand can be a little intimidating. So some people like smaller, more intimate conferences. That's one of the reasons that I like going to the NAMUS conference every year, because it's this small, more targeted discussions. But there is something about just the spectacle of seeing all the huge vendor rooms and the events and the mingling and the drinks and the great, like having a variety of like 10 different sessions you can choose from. 2025 Healthcon is actually going to be held in Disney's Coronado Springs, which is a resort that I absolutely love, and I am already signed up and have my hotel room booked. Coronado Springs is a very large resort, and they have these rooms that are located in different patches called the casitas, and then there's the Grand Destino Tower, which is new, and it was just finishing up being built the last time they had Healthcon there. It is amazing. I love staying in the tower because there is a bus stop right at the front that will take you over to Disney. And if you're in the casitas, you have to remember exactly what bus stop you're going to that's in proximity to your room. So just staying in the tower, I think, is a little bit easier. And there's great restaurants there. Three Bridges is not to be missed. And there's all kinds of like quick services there. It has an amazing pool. It is just a really cool resort. So that's a wrap for Healthcon 2024. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below if you are considering going to a conference in the next year or two. Or if you'd rather go for a cheaper option, maybe something independent, or just hop from chapter to chapter just to get the education. I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, just keep on coding on.